Good day. I'm Martin Gagel with Market Radius Research. It's Thursday, February the 24th, and we've got from Waterways Technologies, board member, director Ronnie Jaegermann joining us. Waterways is an Israeli-based agricultural tech company providing irrigation products, services, and complete solutions to efficiently irrigate crops using the least amount of water through micro and smart irrigation systems. I've known Ronnie for several years. He's a director on the board of directors of Waterways. He's a banker and brings Israeli tech deals to the Canadian markets. I like dealing with him and appreciate his direct and upfront manner. I've got Waterways on because I'm very interested generally in the green tech space and as well, especially in the ag tech and the water space. Waterways brings this together with irrigation technology, something the world is going to have to be much smarter with in the future. And I believe there are many opportunities for investors in this space. Remember, this is neither a recommendation nor investment advice. We're here to learn about the company, do your due diligence, and come to your own investment conclusions. Ronnie, thank you very much for joining us today, and please tell us about Waterways.
So, Martin, thank you so much for hosting me tonight. It's night in the time in Israel, 7:30. It's morning time in Vancouver and midtime in Toronto. My name is Ronnie Jaegermann. I'm a director of Waterways Technologies. I'll tell you a little bit about the company. Waterways is a leading provider of smart irrigation solutions for global agriculture. There we are. And where are we in the world? The world is running out of water very fast. Okay, we've all had droughts. I think even in Western Canada last summer was a disaster. That causes less water. And the other part of the world is the fact that population is increasing and we need more water. So we have less water, but we're demanding more water. And the single most waste in water is irrigation. So 70% of the water we use is to irrigate crops. And this is wasted. We are using it inefficiently, not in a good way. And we can do much better to save water, to consume less water, and actually to make the world a better place.
Well, sir, I'm going to interrupt here. Like it always, like for us here, at least in Western, on the West Coast, probably across North America, we always hear so much out of California. And like the people, when they have droughts, all the population has to like turn off their taps and not flush so much. We're really, I think it's over 90% of their water use is in the agriculture sector. But then when there's a drought, the 5% of people that are using it have to turn off their taps because all the almond growers are over watering and probably not wasting a bunch of it as it goes to non-effective means in the water, in the ground.
Correct. So, but you know, we come from a country which is very arid.
Yes.
And to eat in this country, in Israel, we've had to develop special technologies that we utilize very few water because we don't have water. But if you come today to Israel and you fly over Israel, Israel is about probably 400 miles long. And the 200 or 150 miles, which are the north part of Israel, everything is green. And it's green partially because we utilize water in a very smart way. So in Israel, our fresh water is actually desalinated. About 90% of our drinking water is desalinated. And probably 75% of the water that we irrigate is drip irrigated, but not only, it's brown water, so it's recycled water. So that's how we utilize water in a very smart way in Israel. And what we're doing Waterways, we're using smart drip irrigation solutions that use less water, but actually what they do is they grow better and better crops. And I'll talk about that in a second. So what does the technology do? Okay, drippers are delivering water and fertilizers directly to each plant, or directly, if you wish, to the root of the plant. And the fact that we do it that way is we're using drips, which is very few drips of water to irrigate a plant, but we're also using less fertilizers because the plant needs the plants get exactly the amount of fertilizer it needs. This process is, of course, eco-friendly, but guess what, guys? The fact that we use water and fertilizer in this way gives the farmer much better yields for a given crop. Because the plant is nourished in exactly the amount of water and fertilizers it needs. No more, no less. This technology was developed about 50 years ago in Israel, and as technology developed, today everything is smart, computerized control, cloud-based. Data is put into a system. These whole systems, which includes drippers, hoses, filters, and water pumps, and whatever, they're all very much computerized controlled. Data is given into the system for the crop, the soil, the time of day, the weather, and all kinds of data, and that produces a really very smart irrigation program that people utilizes, and that grows better crops, higher yields with less water and less fertilizers. The market itself is growing very rapidly, mainly because of the problems of shortage of water. So last year it was roughly about $1.2 billion. That's all in American dollars. And it's going to double by the year 2026. So that's a huge, this is the market we're at, and we're going to see huge growth in that market. Let's talk a little bit about the company. The company itself was founded in Israel in 2003 by Ohad Haber, the CEO. He's a veteran of the smart irrigation business. We took the company public in March of 2019, raising altogether $5 million in two steps, a pre-RTO and an RTO. And then we started expanding the business. The first step we did is we acquired the assets of an irrigation distributor in Canada, in Hartnett Grove, which is probably 15 miles, maybe 10 miles south of London, Ontario. We acquired the assets of the company, and rolled everything into a Waterways subsidiary. The owner of that company became our Canadian MD, John Paul, and we started selling both agricultural supplies and irrigation products and projects to the Canadian market. This grew very rapidly from $2 million that John Paul used to do in his own business, maybe 2.5 to $4.5 million altogether in 2021, and we're still growing there. We just announced about 2 months ago that our backlog for Canada, just starting the year, was about $4.1 million. That's Canadian dollars. We did the same thing in sort of strategy in China. We acquired our Chinese distributor in mid-2019, formed a direct sales subsidiary in China. We had a bumpy year in 2020 because of COVID, but as of 2021, we're full operational in China, and we're seeing nice growth from that market as well. In 2021, the business after COVID, post-COVID, you saw a rise in demand around the world for irrigation technology, for smart irrigation technology. We hit record sales last year. I can't divulge yet the amounts itself, but we'll see the 9-month results later in the presentation. And we used the rise of the share to raise $4.1 million. In July, we closed a funding, a private placement that gives us cash to grow the business and to do some acquisitions. In the beginning of February of 2022, we are expanding higher. We announced the acquisition of one of our clients, a Chilean client. Chile is a big country in South America, and we're putting a strong foothold in South America by acquiring Hydrotop, which is a Chilean project irrigation company. And 2 weeks ago, we closed our largest deal ever, which is a $9.4 million contract to irrigate 3 projects of cotton irrigation in the Central Asian country of Uzbekistan. Our business model, we have over 400 customers who are buying daily our products around the world in 40 countries. So we have a very nice component business, which we ship out of Israel probably every day or every week. And that is, as I said, to 400 customers around the world. And our growth business and our margin business is putting and installing irrigation, turnkey irrigation projects around the world. We've been fortunate to put projects in China last year, in Uzbekistan, in Mexico, in Canada, and in all kinds of parts of the world.
Ronnie, so just to be clear, so the turnkey projects is a farmer says, hey, we need a new irrigation system. Presumably they put out some competitive, they ask for competitive bids. You guys go there, say, hey, this is roughly how we're going to design it here. It costs $1 million or whatever. And then you go and install it and presumably install a lot of your own equipment in that and then take a service fee for designing it and implementing it. Is that roughly it?
Basically you're right, but it's not really a farmer. It's normally larger bodies. It could be companies who are growing crops around the world. In China, for instance, it's a subsidiary of Driscoll's. We try to focus on high yield crops. And the fundamental thing that we bring to the market are deep knowledge and profound understanding of how to grow crops and how to irrigate them. So we have agronomists and engineers in the company who know to design a system, and that's what we excel in. We're also focused on mid and small size projects, which defines us from our competition. So that's pretty much where our comparative advantage is. You can see that we're building a global business, if you wish. The headquarter of the holding company is in Toronto, Ontario. We have an operating subsidiary in Canada. Our main business, or our main R&D business, and our sales office and integration is in Israel. That's where most of our staff is. We have an operational subsidiary in China. And as I said, we just acquired a Chilean company to have a strong foothold in South America. So it's pretty much a global reach. And we're building this company to be a large and substantial player in the smart irrigation business.
You mentioned that you focus on the small, medium-sized businesses. What would be a sort of a small, medium-sized contract versus, I guess, the big big businesses?
A good question, Martin. Excellent question. You can just see the table in front of it, and if you just add up, like on average, our size, on average size projects, pretty much $500,000 to $1 million, whereas large projects could be $4 or $5 or $6 million, or even 10. So that's pretty much where our niche in the market is, and you can see that we are trying to spread ourselves around the world. Our main market in 2021 was the Central Asian country of Uzbekistan. It still continues to be this year as well, just because there's government funding in that country, and the government decided that it has a strategic business to grow cotton. So we started with a small scale order in 2019, grew to $4 million. In 2021, and we're up to $9.4 million in 2022. This is, if you wish, Martin, a sort of a reoccurring business, because these are repeat orders from repeat customers, and you grow with your customers. But then if you can see how very nicely we're spread around the world. We did some small initial projects in Canada, altogether $500,000. We hope to grow that business this year as well. Medical cannabis in Israel and in South America. Growing blueberries from Driscoll's in China and other projects. A very interesting project which brings know-how and cultivation for dates to Vietnam, with almost $1 million in revenue, and some blueberries, blueberry irrigation projects in Mexico based on the profound know-how we've developed for cultivation of blueberries, which is a high yield crop.
It looks primarily like you have greenhouse vegetables here, but these, and maybe I don't know about the medical cannabis, but these seem like, I don't know what the term is, open field crops as opposed to mostly outdoor crops as opposed to greenhouse crops? It's
mixed. It's mixed, completely mixed. So cotton is outdoor, medical cannabis is always indoor. Strawberries and blueberries in some cases are indoors. Vegetables are indoor. So it's pretty much spread out. Of course, the profitability on indoor and greenhouses is much higher than outdoor, but still everybody needs drip and smart irrigation technology, whatever it is.
Yeah. Okay, and are there, sorry, we're going back to blueberries here. You said you need to have, I guess, a fair amount of knowledge of the end produce that is being grown. And I guess blueberries is that. And you gain that experience after doing a bunch of projects. You maybe partner with some professors at universities who have expertise in that. And where are your areas of focus, and maybe where are your areas where you're not relatively as strong in?
Well, let's start with your second part of the question. I don't think we've ever done wheat or barley or corn.
Yeah.
Okay. So as you can see, our focus is on high yield crops, vegetables. We also, I don't think we have ever dealt with cabbage and potatoes, anything like that.
Yeah.
But we did mango and we did passion fruit and tomatoes and dates, as I said, and medical cannabis and strawberries and apple groves in China. So it's pretty spread out, because we have a lot of know-how from our surrounding farmers in Israel that have gained know-how for many years how to grow crops very efficiently. So if you wish, I'm just giving some samples of projects. This is, I think, the second time we're doing a project with Driscoll's. Driscoll's is the largest blueberry provider in the world. It's an American company that's growing blueberries in China. It's 20 hectares, subtropical mountain valley with no existing irrigation system. So we put an automated smart drip irrigation system to grow blueberries. It's very successful, and I'm sure we'll get some repeat orders from Driscoll's. Or as I said before, one of our major customers and the key customers is really, if you wish, the governmental project to grow cotton in Uzbekistan. We're selling our systems to a number of growers that are government backed by the government of Uzbekistan. It's a fully automated smart drip irrigation system We're doing this year about, we've done in 2021 about 1,200 hectares. We have this year about 3,500 hectares, which is 3 times the magnitude of area that we're irrigating. We always put water reservoirs and to provide the water and water security.
So I never would have thought that in crops with like thousands of hectares that they would install drip irrigation systems. That just seemed like very precise for such a big open crop. But obviously I'm wrong. So on those huge acreages, you've got little lines running, dripping onto each of the plants?
100%.
Wow.
100%. And I said the reason is Uzbekistan is a very arid country.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of water there. And if you drip irrigate even cotton, and we do that in Israel as well, you can see a lot of drip irrigated cotton in Israel if you ever come to Israel. The yields are much higher and you get much better cotton. Yeah. It's as simple as that. Because if you flood irrigate a field, then you waste a lot of water, but not only that, the water itself, the soil itself gets muddy, okay? And then it's not airy, it doesn't function well.
Okay, because I think cotton has quite a reputation as being super water intensive. Maybe normally they flood the fields and that's why, and so they got a low water option. That's cool.
So we're also doing a lot of stuff in Africa, especially in Ethiopia, where we have a long time presence. And this is just a sample, $500,000, fully automated drip irrigation system, 20 hectares, which is not very big. This is greenhouse, and this is helping African farmers because if we bring technology to Africa, we give them good crops, then they can then export the strawberries to Europe, and they get a lot of foreign currency and employment, and you bring actually growth to a country like Ethiopia by doing that. Unfortunately, this year is a little bit weak because there's civil unrest in Ethiopia, but I hope we'll overcome that this year. And one of the things we did very quickly is analyze the cultivation of medical cannabis. And when Kronos, this is actually an older project from 2019, when Kronos came to Israel and wanted to enter the market and grow medical cannabis in Israel, they actually partnered with a kibbutz, Gan Shmuel, which is probably halfway between Tel Aviv and Haifa. And they put a bid for a fully automated, comprehensive single-point irrigation and climate control solution, which they wanted to control from their headquarters, which I think is 100 miles north of Ontario. And everybody wanted, this was sort of a very prestigious project. Everybody in the market tried to bid, and we were the most expensive bidder. Okay, so this was a $900,000 project, but we won it because we were the only ones who provided them with a complete computerized IoT system to control this whole cultivation facility from Ontario to Israel. And we're very proud of that. We've then won additional projects in Israel, one in South America, and we're bidding for some more around the world. So if we look, I think that is probably one of the most interesting slides that I have today. Our sales for the 9 months ending September 2021 were roundly just between $50 to $60 million. We are starting 2022 with a backlog of roughly $14 million just in two territories or projects. So we have a $9.4 million forward-looking project in Uzbekistan. And last year in December, our backlog for Canada for sales into Canadian irrigation market was $4.1 million Canadian. I expect probably it's higher already today. I don't have the numbers exactly, but I can't give any forward-looking statements. But if anybody does the math, this is just from two countries, and I let everybody have his own imaginations on where we're heading in 2022.
And these projects, they're complex, but they're not multi-year implementations, are they? So would it be fair to assume off of that roughly $14-15 million of backlog you highlighted there, that you'll basically implement those projects in calendar 2022 and that'll fall in as revenue for this year? That's
normally the case, exactly.
All right.
Okay, so that's normally the case. So a little bit about financials. You're looking at the bars. I think they're pretty impressive. 9 months sales grew from $9.5 million in 2020 to 15.7 in 2021. Service revenue, which is what we call our project revenue, grew from 2.2 to $8 million. Our gross profit improved dramatically from 1.5 to 2.9. And we started 2020, which was a rough year for us, COVID year, with a negative EBITDA. And we have a positive EBITDA in the 9 months ending September 2021. As for the cap table, we have right now about 144 million shares outstanding, probably a little bit more because some of the people already executed their warrants. On a fully diluted basis, we have 186 million shares. Insider own about 35%. The free float is about 65%. We've seen tremendous growth in volume of shares. Last year, I think the average was about $50,000 shares a day. We're at today over 300,000 shares a day. We've listed the company in Frankfurt in August, and we have probably from Germany also roughly an average turnover of 150,000 shares a day. So we've drawn a lot of interest from shareholders around the world, and I want this to keep growing and growing. Management of the company includes Ohad Haber as CEO, Tomer Bachar as CTO, Amir Alon, who brings in the projects from around the world. He personally was in charge of bringing this wonderful Uzbekistan order. It was a hard deal, hard negotiation. But we completed it very successful. Tal Weil is our chief agronomist. He's actually going to do a lot of support for the Canadian and American market this year. Very talented young guy, and and we have a very young and ambitious CFO, Dor Snee. We've actually enlarged our board. We used to have 5 people, and we have now a 7-member board of directors, which includes Ohad Haber, who is the CEO and chairman, Yuda Doron, who comes from the retail business, Jay Richardson, who's an old-timer, he's a CPA, an old veteran of the Canadian mining business. He's been on numerous boards. James Lanthier, who's the CEO of Mind Pharma, which is a psychedelic company. He was also a CEO of Tangelo Games, which is both are listed and we're listed in Canadian capital markets. And James brings a lot of knowledge in both in capital markets, in running companies. He's a great asset to the company. Daniel Brock is our legal advisor and joined the board, and Nitin Kashoy is a veteran. He's a CPA, but has a lot of, he served on the board of many, actually medical, health and pharma companies in Canada and the US, and of course myself. What is our competitive advantage, and how are we building this global business? So first of all, we have a very experienced management team. People who have been in this industry, know the business, know how to sell to farmers. In the farming business and ag business, it's a lot about relationship, trust, and long-time relationship, and that is what we have. We have a reach over 5 continents, well, to be exact, 4 continents. We're not selling in Australia yet. We're targeting, as I said before, Martin, small to medium projects, not large projects. We have the best and by far the advanced smart irrigation technology based from Israel. And we're bridging this gap between the customer and the supplier. And what is our growth strategy? Because this is essentially why I think people need to pay attention to us and invest in our story. So we're trying to build a major player in the smart irrigation business. And we're doing that, first of all, by organic growth. We have internal growth, we're growing year over year. We have this strategy of opening sales office around the world. I think we've demonstrated that successfully. We will be adding cutting-edge technologies to our portfolio to increase our yields, to increase our gross margin. And we're looking to do M&A strategic acquisitions. We just are in the midst of one. It's a great company, Hydrotop. I expect, I hope we can close it in the near future, and it will add to the top line and the bottom line of Waterways still in 2022. So I thank you everybody for listening, and we're open for questions.
All right, Ronnie, thank you very much. We've got a couple of questions from the audience, and I'll start with the first one here, and because you kind of ended on it with the Chilean acquisition, and what's the timing? And you said shortly, so I guess that's in a month or two, something like that when you say shortly?
No, we're trying to do that as soon as we can. We signed an LOI, which we announced in the second week of January. We're going through a due diligence process like any public company. I hope we'll have a positive recommendation, and then we'll close it.
All right. And what are the benefits of this acquisition to Waterways?
2 things. This is a long-term client of ours. So the first and foremost, we're putting a foothold in South America, both in Chile and Argentina, which are a huge agriculture market. And the second thing is the company is growing and profitable, so it will add to both our top line and bottom line.
And just generally, M&A is part of your strategy. What are your general objectives with M&A? Is it to get sort of distribution and clients in new geographic regions? Is it to maybe get some like crop expertise of it, or is it to some new technologies that help augment your portfolio? What do you get out of the acquisitions?
I'll divide my answer into 2. So first of all, it is global reach, and by acquiring a distributor, you get his access to end clients, which are farmers or farming companies. So that is, of course, and that's both territory and deep reach. But we will strive to acquire technology. There's a lot of technology out there that is complementary or part of our product offering. We haven't spotted yet one company, but I'm sure in the future that is going to be also one of our goals.
All right. And and I guess when you acquire, like they're distributors, who does the installations of these systems? Do you send and I don't know how complex is it? Like, do you send is it like an IKEA hand, you sort of plug it in yourself, or you send one engineer there to make sure it all works and they hire local guys to like dig the holes and sort of the lower value?
If you look at the magnitude of projects in Uzbekistan, we have a team there underground in Tashkent and Bukhara who help the locals to install. Of course, they don't do the actual installation of the drippers and so on. That's where we have local staff or local employees who do it. But we always oversee the installation and the turnkey system with our engineers worldwide, wherever we install a system. So it's never shipped without our engineers.
Gotcha. And I'm guessing as well, when you buy a distributor, they get access to clients, and then as well that you're probably buying someone you have a relationship already and is reselling some of your products and representing you in the different markets. But I guess if you would acquire them, you can then maybe push more of your product as well into their distribution channel, like other flow controllers or whatever, you emphasize yours or push some other guys out there so that you get greater of the client market share of your products.
Exactly. I mean, that's exactly what we did in Canada. That's exactly what we did in China, and that's what's going to happen in Chile. So all right. Had employees, had knowledge, had access, had an intimate relationship with several of their clients, and that's how we push our sales and increase our gross margins.
Gotcha. You talked about you're on the small and medium size of the projects, not so much the big size ones. Those Uzbekistan ones, would those is that sort of a new market in terms of big projects, or is that still not considered a big project?
Of course, Martin. Yeah, these are projects that they're very prestigious because these are already, they're impressive numbers, impressive orders. So yeah, we're competing with the big guys here for sure.
And I guess that is part of, as you get a bigger global reach, you are going to be going after larger projects in the future as well.
I would expect so, by all means, of course.
Okay. And could you your margins have definitely improved. Could you talk about the margins, on the project side, and then on the, like your recurring revenue as someone's controller valve breaks and they need to buy a new one and then you ship them a new one. That's sort of a recurring. And I'm presuming that has higher margins, especially when you own the distributor as well, as opposed to the project stuff. Could you talk about kind of project margins versus product margins?
So it's actually the opposite.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so the consumable business or the recurring sales have margins of about 15% by average. Yeah. Of course, if we buy a distributor, you're 100% right. So if we sell those directly to the farmer, our margin increases to about 30 to 40%. So you're right. So that is part of the strategy. On the project side, we try to have not less than 25 to 30% margin in putting a complete turnkey irrigation project.
Gotcha. And I would have fair to say, I guess not maybe in the Kronos one, but the bigger the projects, do those end up having kind of lower percentage margins, but bigger dollar value?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Not necessarily. It really depends on the competition and how you structure it. And actually, the bigger, also our buying power is much higher.
Yeah. Okay. And in countries where you don't own the distributor, do you work with agents and other agents who find the projects and then distributors, and then you kind of work in conjunction with them when you're putting together a bid and so forth?
Exactly. You have to, because they understand the local language, they have the relationship, and we pay them a commission. Okay.
All right. And when you acquire a distributor, is there a general sort of multiple that you pay, like a certain times revenue or times EBITDA, just like any?
The lowest possible.
Okay. All right. All right. And just going back to your slide deck with your warrants outstanding, your warrants, not to get too precise, what are they generally priced at? Like, are they mostly in the money at this point, or where?
This is very, it's a good question, Martin. So when we did the private placement in mid 2021, every subscriber subscribed to a unit which comprised of one share at 12 cents and one warrant at 18 cents. Those warrants have a forced conversion starting July, maybe even June, if the share price trades over 24 cents for 10 consecutive days. Stock prices right now, what is it? Let's see.
34-ish.
34. So even in this horrible day of a war starting between the Ukraine and Russia, which I think is something I wouldn't dream in my time, stock is holding very nicely. And I expect those warrants to be exercised, which will bring another $6.6 million in cash into the company in July.
Gotcha. And how much cash do you need to grow the business organically? Is it like, and I guess, yeah, could you talk about sort of do you get paid when you get a new, or like you win a project, do they pay 20% down and then milestone payment?
Martin, it's a little bit different than that. Most of our business is in third world countries. And therefore, all projects, we do not take any credit risk. So all projects are backed by letter of credits.
Okay.
So we can't work any other way. So there's a security on the project. It's fully financeable. We have actually credit lines for it with Israeli banks. And that's how we work right now. So we do not, except for Canada, which is sort of Canada as a prime country. In most countries, there's no credit or no credit risk.
Do you do much sales in the U.S. right now?
That is our weakness, if you wish, because we hardly have any sales in the U.S. But I think it should be a strategy of ours in 2023 to enter the U.S. market.
That's maybe a weakness now, but also an opportunity. So,
of course, thank you for saying that.
That's a softball for you there. Okay, I'll go into some of the more questions from the audience here. Are there any future plans or opportunities in cereal crops like wheat or soybeans?
I don't understand what he means by opportunity, but soybeans are normally flood irrigated, so it's not in our sort of a normal way of business, but who knows? But
that couldn't change into like being drip irrigated, or that's not currently being done out in the market right now?
I don't think it's the market now. But by the way, it's an interesting question. You would think that for you Canadians that are in Ontario, you would think that nobody would use drip irrigation in Ontario, being a rainy province and so on with a lot of water. But if you actually drive from Toronto to Niagara Falls, there's tons of greenhouses which are drip irrigated, but also there are a lot of vineyards there. And I saw it myself, all of them, 100% of them are drip irrigated.
I wouldn't be surprised in the Okanagan Valley here in BC if that would be largely.
Probably, yeah, I would bet you. I haven't been there, but I drove to Niagara Falls, and you can actually Canadian farmers are adapting to this technology as well, because it just grows crop better than anything else.
Yeah. All right.
I'm talking about grapes in open fields, right? So that's what we're doing.
All right. Can you shed more light onto your expected margins going forward?
I'm I'm not allowed to shed any forward-looking statements, but generally, of course, the company will strive to improve margins, especially gross margins, because we have a total for a business that it has trailing $20 million of sales in 2021. We have, I think, altogether about 35 employees worldwide. I think we're pretty efficient, so we don't have a lot of expenses, but we will strive to improve our gross margins. That is our target for both 2022 and, of course, 2023, because they'll improve the bottom line as well.
And I'm guessing, we haven't talked about it, that like the equipment, like the controllers, the hardware and so forth, you don't have your own manufacturing plants. You probably get that outsourced to third parties and they build on your design. And then I'm guessing as you get bigger with scale, you get better pricing power out of those guys as well.
You know, that's an interesting question, Martin, because as we get bigger, and we have more manufacturing power, I imagine that down the road, 2-3 years, we'll have our own manufacturing lines as well for some of the products. Like, right. You don't need to buy a factory, but you can buy you can have a company in Israel just manufacture for you 100%.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Will waterways have an impact on the major droughts being observed in many places across the globe?
Well, I'm missing the question.
Well, they're asking, will you have a positive impact on droughts? I guess making them less severe since not as much water is being used in agriculture, or I guess twisting it the other way, will you benefit from these unfortunate droughts where the droughts are going to force farmers
when I started the presentation,
drip systems?
Our business is growing because of droughts, because of global warming, 100%. So we're in that niche, and it drives the whole world and the whole business of smart irrigation upwards.
Yeah.
And I tried to explain that we're coming from a country that there's no water. There's one big water reservoir, which is called the Sea of Galilee, where Jesus walked on the water. But that's it. No other fresh water in Israel. So when immigration came to Israel, the country farmers, the country academics needed to develop very smart way of irrigating crops. Because don't forget that in the inception of Israel, nobody wanted to deal with us. So we had to develop our own way of growing foods. It was part of the ideology as well. And today we're very efficient in using water. We don't use fresh water to irrigate at all. We use brown water. Very few countries in the world do that. So even if we have the worst drought in Israel, our drinking water comes from desalinated water, and our irrigation water comes from brown water. So actually, our main source of water, which is the Sea of Galilee, we've stopped pumping. We've actually stopped pumping drinking water from that big reservoir of fresh water.
Yeah.
And I think the whole world needs to do that. Like, the Americans are in deep trouble because they didn't foresee it coming. And today they have no water in California, nor in Utah, nor in other states. And it's going to take them. I mean, you know, I deeply admire Americans and American technology and so on. But it's going to take them probably 10 years to do everything we've done in Israel to fight global warming.
Yeah.
So there's no desalination plants in California.
Yeah.
And I don't know where they're going to get their drinking water, but they better start building those pretty fast.
Well, and I guess going back to this question, if I don't know, the California agricultural, if they all switch to, and I have no idea how much is high efficiency, let's say drip irrigation, if they switch to drip irrigation, then that could reduce their water usage dramatically and at least push out the whatever the 0 day or whatever they call it when they run out of water.
100%.
Yeah,
I think that. But by the way, I think that's probably a little bit true also for Western Canada.
for sure. And
it gets very warm and very scarce water in South Alberta and in BC.
Yep. Yeah, no, we've been learning that a lot. And I'm not too sure if people appreciate as well, you guys desalinate water, but desalinating water is very energy intensive. You need a lot of pressure to sort of get the salt out of the water. So it's not kind of free water. That's relatively expensive water as well. And I presume saving it on the end of not using as much saves a whole lot of water, saves a whole lot of money on the desalination side.
Correct, but you know, you don't have a choice. Like,
yes,
you just don't.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
And we see it in our neighboring countries, in Israel, in Jordan, in Lebanon, in Syria. There's scarcity of water.
Yeah. So, and another question here, can you comment on the relationship between Kronos and Waterways? How has that relationship been?
It's a good relationship. They very appreciate us. And I think we'll hope to probably expand in some time our business with us once they build additional facilities. I think the current downturn in the cannabis industry hindered them from doing it. But, you know, as they expand, we probably will expand with them as well.
All right. There's not, the last comment here isn't a question. They're just thanking you for taking the time to chat with us. And I thank you. I think we're pretty much, I'm out of questions. I guess we're up to almost an hour here, so we should wrap it up. Any final comments or thoughts or comments you want to leave the viewers here to contemplate as we wrap it up?
Well, you know, I think Waterways has gone a tremendous way since it went public in 2019. But I think we've executed and we are executing our business plan. And I hope we will do also in the coming years. And I think we're at the right spot, at the right place, at the right time. And I think it's just a damn good investment for people.
Hey, Ronnie, thanks a lot for taking the time to talk to us. Have a great day.
I remember that very rainy day in Vancouver when we first met.
Yeah. That was a few years ago. Great seeing you again. And we've got sunny weather out here today in Vancouver and snow on the ground. So an unusual day for us. So,
okay. All right.
Ronnie, thanks for making the time. And I really hope we can chat again like this maybe in a few months or 6 months from now and get an update on how business continues to grow.
With pleasure, Martin. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And thank you, Martin, for hosting me. I really appreciate it.
Cheers.